If you're like me and you love reality TV and you've never heard of Tempting Fortune, which I had never even heard it, the second season's just started. I watched the first 2 episodes and I went back and binge watched the full first season, and in this video I'm going to break it down. So if you love reality and you haven't seen it, go and watch it and then come back to this. But if you have seen it, let's talk about it. In this show there's 12 contestants and a grand prize of 300,000, which is split between the remaining contestants. And when I first started watching this, I was like, 300,000 is a shit prize for what they've got to endure. This is not easy. This is not just sitting on your arse and splitting paper clips into colour order. This is hard. But after watching the full first season, I thought, right, I understand why that's the amount. I understand why they've got the rules that they have. Because if it wasn't that, then everybody would just be splurging. This show's dramatic. This is not for the faint of heart. Let's get into it. And by the way, I won't be talking about every single contestant because I can't even remember most of them, but I'll just be talking about the main ones. This is Lani. She's basically the main character of the series. She's the ringleader when it comes to getting people to spend money. There's so many things about her that I don't like. I think that she's extremely selfish. In her defence, though, this was season 1. She'd never seen the show before. They didn't really know what was expected of them. There's a lot of hiking, climbing, like it's hard going, right? So she takes some help when it comes to doing the walks and stuff, and she says, oh, it said in the description of the show that there would be walking, there would be a lot of walking. This is not just walking. I wouldn't be able to do this. I would be absolutely fucked. So she's went into this show knowing that there's going to be a grand prize that they end up sharing and knowing that there's going to be a lot of walking, right? So she didn't really have the knowledge that was necessary to go on a reality show. I've got to give her that. Caroline went in there saying that she wasn't going to take any temptations. She told her kids she wasn't going to take any temptations. But after speaking to Lani for about 5 minutes, she soon changed her tune. Charlie was hardcore. I'm not taking any temptations. If I take even one temptation, I'll have failed. James is a dick. He's an absolute dick. You'll find out why soon enough. But he's went in there. He's basically made himself the leader of the camp, even though he does fuck all apart from tell people what to do. Oh my god. And then we have Truly, who's not really problematic, but I'll get to her at the end. So in this show, they're hiking, and it's fucking hard work, right? Obviously they weren't expecting this. And then the show build like a random coffee stand or a diner or something to tempt him. And the stuff is not cheap. Whatever they take comes out of the full prize fund at the end. So they're hiking and they get to the first diner. I can't remember the exact prices, but just as an example, it's maybe 1,000 or 1,500 for a burger and 500 for a milkshake. Now, it was day 1. There was absolutely no need to be a cunt, but Lani decided that she wanted a £500 milkshake. And in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, right, that's £50 each, but you're on day 1. Get a fucking grip. As time goes on, she's taking more and more temptations. But 2 of them specifically annoyed me. One was that they had the chance to secretly drink a hot chocolate that I think was £400, and she drank it and then she lied about it. Now, I fucking hate liars, right? And I know that it was like, oh, it's going to be a secret, but you know it's going to come out at the end. There was literally no need for her to have that hot chocolate. Later on, they had the chance to do a spa, which was £1,000 each, and for an extra 500, she could get her favourite makeup, which she took, and I would have been so fucking annoyed. And later on, one of the guys says to her about it, like, why did you need that makeup? And she's like, oh, babe, for reasons you wouldn't understand. The only reason you would need makeup is for insecurity, and that's not our problem. Why should we need to pay to fix your fucking face? She's went on a TV show, and she knows that she can't wear makeup. Why the fuck does she want to traipse about the jungle wearing makeup? It makes zero sense. That's a self-confidence problem. So she ended up taking several temptations, not giving a fuck, and I kind of thought she's like the villain of this series, but I was wrong. Caroline, who says she wasn't going to take any temptations and then spoke to Lani for 2 seconds, folded like a fucking deck chair. And the thing that annoyed me about it wasn't even the temptations, it was the fact that she kept saying, oh, I would love this thing. I would never be able to afford to do this. You're going to be going home with roughly £20,000. Go home and buy it. Go home and go on a safari for a week or 2 weeks instead of for fucking half an hour. or an hour. That's the thing that was pissing me off. Don't get me wrong, they had a temptation at the end that a few of them spent money on, and I thought it was well worth it. So the whole group basically ended up splitting in two. Half of them were saying, do you know what, we can be here, we can have the experience, we can take some temptations and have fun and not take it too seriously. And then the other half that Charlie was in, they were die hard, like, we are not spending any money, nobody buy anything. And admittedly, if I was in a group like that and somebody was like, oh my god, I'm fucking dying for a drink, and they wanted to spend £200 in a can of Coke, I'd be like, do you know what, fucking take it. It's not that big a deal, but obviously some of the temptations were really expensive. So Charlie's obviously a really competitive person, and he's competitive against himself, and he was giving himself such a hard time, but he was saying to the other people, oh, you're weak, blah, 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 which a lot of them were weak, right? But they were saying, you're a sheep, you're only doing this stuff because James is telling you to do it, 100%. He was trying to impress James, who ended up being a complete fanny. So at the end, they're told that the money is now going to come out of their own prize pot, and it's not going to be split amongst everybody else. And he got himself 3 beers for £600, and he was fucking raging the next day. He was like throwing things and like just acting like a psychopath. He was being way too hard on himself. And then at the very end, he took another temptation, which I thought was well worth the money. I think that once it got to the point where it was like, right, now you're spending your own money, there was no harm in taking temptations at that point. Truly got stuck with the half of the group that were dead against spending any money, and she had a chance to phone home for £100 a minute, and she didn't do it, and she really missed her mum, and it was actually a sin. So they then had the chance to have a silent disco, and with drinks and food and everything, and she really, really wanted it, but her side of the group was saying, no, it's like majority vote. So they didn't have it, and she was raging. And I think that if she'd have been with the other half, she definitely would have done it, but her side of the group, they were a bit too harsh in my opinion. But once they were told they could spend their own money, she went for it. She was buying cocktails, she got herself the meal at the end, and I don't feel like she was unfair whatsoever. So even though Lani was completely selfish and childish throughout the whole series, she did have some good points, you know what I mean? Like, it's not all about the money, we're here to have fun. But the actual villain of the series was James. He is such a fucking hypocrite. I hate liars. I hate hypocrites. And, oh my god, I just fucking hated him. At the start, I thought, right, he's kind of got a point. You're spending other people's money. But he totally exaggerated everything. Because if they says, oh, you can have a party for £1,000, and he say, oh, do you know how many parties I can have for £1,000? I can have 19 parties when I go home for £1,000. Where the fuck is he paying for these parties? 1953? They had the chance to get a final, like, farewell meal, all-inclusive drinks and all that for £1,000. And he went, oh, when I go home, I can take me, my wife, my daughter, and like 19 people for a meal for £1,000. Where does this guy live? Does he have a time machine? Is he literally going back to the 20s where £100 is like £50,000? I need to know his spending secrets. But he gave everybody a hard time for spending anything. And then at one point, they got to a hotel and it was £3,000 a bed. So they got food, drink, new pyjamas and all this. But it was £3,000 per bed, so they could share a bed. So one half of the group took the hotel and they spent £9,000. He was raging, but that night he ended up stealing a cup of tea. And the show charged him the £3,000. And he had the fucking audacity to be like, some of us are built different, some of us don't need temptations. But he stole his temptation, he wasn't even honest. He's a fucking thief, and he's a fucking liar, and he's a fucking hypocrite, and I can't stand him. I literally can't stand him. Oh, some people are built different, some people are honest. He can fuck off. Anyway, I'm running out of time. In the end, only 2 people didn't take any temptations. He still went to the end, saying that he didn't take any temptations. Aye, because he fucking stole it. He actually stole it, and he spent £300. The amount that they all got individually in the end was only like £3,000 a difference each. But anyway, that was the breakdown of season 1. I'm going to do episode 1 and 2 of season 2. Let me know if you watched this, and let me know what you thought of it in the comments.